Welcome to the 22nd chapter of the book of Deuteronomy. Continues with these instructions by God to Moses to the people, and it begins, "In beholding the calf of your brother, Adelphu," Adelphu, called the city of brotherly love. The phileo is a friend, love, and Adelphu, a brother. So when you see the calf of your brother or his sheep, or provaton, as we mentioned earlier, could be a sheep or a goat, sort of like the flock, but there's another word for flock, wandering in the way, odometer is a derivative for there. Do not overlook them. By returning, you shall return them to your brother, and you shall give them back to him. I had person I was living with, a couple of guys, back in the 1960s, and they were school teachers. They weren't Christians, and I wasn't walking with the Lord at the time. But close by was a fellow that was moving. So he brought all of his things that he was moving out to put in his car, and he brought out the stereo and record player type thing, and put it down, and forgot to put it in, and drove off, and it was there in the street. So one of the roommates saw it there, and he took it in, and naturally you'd think he was going to give it back, and somebody told the fellow that he took it, so he came and asked for it back, and he wouldn't give it to him. He said, "Well, I found out in the street it's mine now," because it's finders keepers type of a thing. Well, we got on his case, and then finally he gave in and gave it back to the guy. But that's the opposite of what it's talking about here. Here it's talking about not having an attitude of selfishness, getting something free if you can, like this animal that's wandering. Oh, right, nobody knows he's there. I'm going to take him and keep him. No, this is not what God wants us to do. And it continues in 2, and it says, "And if your brother is not near to you, nor do you know him, you shall bring them," the animals, "inside into your house." Well, I don't think you can bring a cow inside your house, but whatever, here, your household, maybe your house area, "and it shall be with you until whenever your brother should seek them, and you shall give them back to him. So you shall do for his donkey, and so shall you do for his garment, and so shall you do according to all loss of your brother, as much as should perish of his, and you should find them. You shall not be able to overlook. You shall not just watch the donkey of your brother or his calf fallen in the way. You should not overlook them. By raising, you shall raise them up." Raising if it's caught in something, then you're to raise it up. Now, in the New Testament, we see where it says there was a man who had a withered hand, and they asked him, saying, "Is it allowed on the Sabbaths to cure, that they should charge him?" And he said to them, "What man will be from out of you who shall have one sheep, and if this one should fall in the Sabbaths into a cistern, shall not grab hold of it and raise it? How much then differs a man than a sheep?" So he used this law to show their hypocrisy of wanting. The whole idea here is to do good for your neighbor and to help him, and with even if the animal is caught. But they were using it as then that person would be working on the Sabbath and they could condemn him, rather than looking at God's original plan. Then in 5 it says, "The items of a man shall not be upon a woman, nor should a man put on feminine apparel. For everyone doing these things is an abomination to the Lord your God." Now today, in the year 2019 in the United States, transdressing is becoming a fad. More than a fad, I don't know why it's catching on so much, with men wearing women's clothes and dressing up and looking like women. And women started changing back in the 1960s. Before the 60s, they were wearing dresses, but then they started wearing pants. A lot of it happened during the Second World War, and they were working in factories, which is understandable. But then they started wearing pants and taking over the, I don't know what the word for it, taking over the things that a man should be doing on themselves, and actually making it harder on themselves because they weren't built to do certain things. So it's an abomination to the Lord. Now, today, it's completely legal and people are doing it and proud of it and going down the street in parades, dressed in the opposite sex and so forth. And if I was going to say, well, that's an abomination, that's really something wrong. Well, it's an abomination to the Lord. There are a lot of things that I do that are abominations to the Lord, and there are things that other people do that are abominations to the Lord. And I believe when we see these things, rather than pointing them out as something they're doing that's bad, if we're doing something similar, which is hypocrisy, then basically the easiest and the best way is to say, well, if the Lord, this is an abomination to the Lord, not necessarily to me. Maybe it is, but I wouldn't necessarily push that point. I would push the point that it was an abomination to the Lord first. So, and it continues, and if you should meet with a nest of birds before your face in the way or upon any tree. Now here I highlighted in red because I wanted to show you, this is not like we had in the last chapter with xilu, the timber tree. I was telling you there's another word, and here it is, 1186, dendron. And this is the dative. And so if you see a bird, and maybe you're even hunting for them, and you find a nest and you're looking for eggs, or it's on the ground, which some birds nest on the ground, with young chicks or eggs, and the mother should be incubating upon the young or upon the eggs, you shall not take the mother with the offspring. This is interesting. By discharge you shall send off the mother, but the offspring you shall take to yourself, that it should be good to you, and you shall be of many days. So you can take the eggs or the little offspring. I don't know what you want to do with the little bitty offspring of a chick. It's too small to cook, but basically the eggs you would take and shoo the mother away, but you don't take the mother if it's incubating. Now, if it's not incubating, it's just a bird in the field and it's a clean bird, then you can kill it and eat it. And if you should build, now here's the first building code probably in history. If you should build a new house, then you shall make a rim or a fence type thing for your roof. And the roofs then were flat, and people went up and they had stairways going up to the roof, and they could sit up there and see things far off and have a chair and lay down, whatever. So if you do have something like that, you needed a rim so you will not cause carnage, that is, somebody falling off in your house if, and I changed this here, one falling should fall from it. So that's another one. Changes here. You shall not scatter abroad of your vineyard diverse seed, that the produce should not be sanctified, and also the seed, whichever you should sow, with the produce of your vineyard. Basically, it's to be one produce, not two of them together. And for some reason, God has set these types of rules up. 7 years and first 3 years of new plants, you can't eat anything from it. And then the fourth year, you take it to the Levites. Fifth year, it's yours. And so all these different rules and regulations concerning all sorts of things in agriculture and construction. Here another one. You shall not plow with a calf and donkey upon the same yoke. So the yoke was a long bar that they put, and then it was harnessed to the animal, and then normally oxen would pull a plow, and which the yoke was the thing that they pulled, and the plow was hooked onto the yoke. And you couldn't plow with two different types of animals. They had to be the same animal, basically. You shall not put on commingled wool and flax upon the same garment. So you either had linen clothing or you had wool. And the wool from the sheep was used for clothing and for bedding and so forth. But now I put on the same. I put garment, but I suppose it could be even, I'm not sure, it would probably be, it could be the same thing, like the some type of a bedding material or whatever. On the flax, we have linen. We have linen as the derivatives there. Flax, which is a sort of linen, comes from cotton. You can't commingle cotton and wool. Well, I have shirts that I do have cotton and wool, intermingled. They're very nice shirts, but I'm not underneath the Judaic law like this, and they are that way. Although, to tell you the truth, I like it better when they're just the cotton. They don't itch as much. But the wool does last a long time. Next one, a twisted fringe you shall make to yourself upon the 4 decorative hems of your wraparound garments, whichever you should put around yourself by them. Now these decorative hems, that we have something that's interesting here. With Jesus, I mentioned, here it is, these things of his speaking to them, behold, one ruler having come did obeisance to him, saying that, my daughter just now came to an end, but having come, place your hand upon her, and she shall live. And Jesus, having arisen, followed him and his disciples. And behold, a woman hemorrhaging 12 years, having come forward behind, touched the crosbedu, the decorative hem of his cloak. For she said in herself, if only I should touch his cloak, I shall be delivered. And Jesus, having turned and beholding her, said, be of courage, daughter. Your belief has delivered you. And the woman was delivered from that hour. Now this happened in other places where they touched the decorative hem. He went through villages and they just brought people out that were sick to touch the decorative hem. Same thing happened with Peter after the resurrection, where they wanted to just touch his clothing. Now there are those televangelists who have little pieces of cloth, prayer cloth and things, and you send money and they send it to you as a donation, and they send it to you. They prayed over it, and this is something that you would touch, and it would heal whatever you're donating it for. Verse 13, and if any should take, but let's go to another one. In Matthew 23:5, it has, it talks about the decorative hem in another place. In all their works they do to be a spectacle to the men. And they widen their phylacteries, that's those little boxes on their head, and I think they have them on their wrist. And they magnify the craspedu, the craspida, the decorative hems of their cloaks. So they make them bigger so people can see them. And they are found of first place in the suppers, and the first seats in the synagogues, and the greetings in the markets, and to be called by the men, Rabbi, Rabbi. So this is what they were doing with these decorative hems. Now this next part is a little bit on the adult content side, so a warning that this is what it is. And if any should take a wife, and should live with her, and should detest her, and should place upon her words offered as an excuse, and should bring upon her a bad name, and should say, I took this woman, and drawing near to her, I did not find her tokens of virginity. So the man what's going on here as he has a wife, maybe living with her for quite a while, and all of a sudden they dislike each other, wants to get rid of her, so he claims that she wasn't a virgin when he married her, and that he did not find her tokens of virginity. And what those were, or was, it was a cloth that after having her first sex, the blood flowing would be on this cloth that she was laying on in her marriage night, and then the parents would take this cloth and save it because of the meaning of her virginity. There was a movie out. It wasn't with Jews, but it was about Muslims, and I forgot, it was years ago, but it was in Israel, and the Muslim Palestinians, the man made a vow that unless he defeated these Jews, somehow he wasn't going to have sex with his wife or something like that. And so the mother caused herself to have a flow of blood and on the a cloth, and saved it as from her daughter, but it wasn't. But it was a disgrace if the daughter didn't have this tokens of virginity. And that was in this movie, and I don't remember the name. So the parents have the token, but the husband says that there's nothing there. She wasn't a virgin. And taking the patir of the child and the metir, paternal, maternal, shall bring forth the tokens of the virginity of the child to the council of elders at the gate. And the father of the child shall say to the council of elders, This daughter of mine I gave to this man as a wife, and now he's detesting her. He now places upon her words offered as an excuse, saying, I did not find tokens of virginity of your daughter. And these are the tokens of virginity of my daughter. And they shall unfold the garment worn by her before the council of elders of the city. So they see it with the blood. And the council of elders of that city shall take that man and shall correct him, probably beat him, and shall penalize him 100 shekels, and shall give them to the father of the young woman, because he brought a bad name upon an Israelite virgin, and she shall be his wife. He shall not be able to send her away at any time. So now, I don't know if the parents, they decide that we're going to take this and we're going to put it aside, and the husband's not going to know. And if he does come, he's got a lot to lose. If we prove that he is, that she was a virgin, he could be beaten and fined, and then the wife can never he can never send her away, no matter what excuse after that. But if in truth this word be, that is, she wasn't a virgin, and tokens of virginity should not be found to the young woman, then they shall lead the young woman unto the doors of her father's house, and the men of her city shall stone her with stones, and she shall die. For she did folly among the sons of Israel to fornicate the house of her father. And you shall lift away the wicked from out of yourself. And if a man should be found going to bed with a wife living with a husband, you shall kill both, the man going to bed with the wife and the wife. And you shall lift away wickedness from out of Israel. And we see that in the New Testament. Jesus went to the Mount of Olives, and at dawn again he came into the temple, and all the people came to him. And having sat, he taught them. And the scribes and the Pharisees led to him a woman having been overtaken in adultery. And having stood her in the midst, they say to him, Teacher, this woman we found in the very act committing adultery. And in our law Moses gave charge for such to be stoned. You then, what do you say? But this they said, testing him, that they should have a charge against him. But Jesus, bowing low, with the finger he wrote on the ground, or the dust, and as they continued asking him, "What do we do? What's your answer?" And he writes, and having raised the head, he said to them, "The one sinless of you, let him cast the first stone." The imperative. And again, bowing low, he wrote on the ground. And they, having heard what he said, and by their consciences being reproved, went forth one by one, beginning from the older. So probably maybe 5 or 6 men. Jack, the oldest one, wrote down all of Jack's sins. And Jack's looking, oh, whoa. And then John, the second one, he writes all the sins of John. And then Harry writes all of his down. He's a little younger. And then the next one, and the youngest one, maybe if just a few things. He's a young person, but yet he's writing all these down. And as they see their name, I think, and that doesn't say that, but this is what I believe happened. And so they started leaving once they saw their name and what they did, because it says one by one left, beginning from the older. And Jesus was left behind alone, and the woman being in the middle. And Jesus, having raised the head, and seeing no one looking around except the woman, said to her, "Woman, where are they, those your accusers? Did no one condemn you?" And she said, "No one, O Lord." And Jesus said to her, "Nor I condemn you. Go, from the presence, sin no longer." I bet she didn't. I bet she listened. And he saved her from being stoned to death. And if there be a child virgin being espoused to a man, and a man finding her in the city should have gone to bed with her, you shall lead out both unto the gate of their city, and they shall be stoned with stones, and shall die, the young woman, for she did not yell out in the city, and the man, for he humbled the wife of his neighbor. Well, wife or espoused. And you shall lift away the evil from out of yourself of them. But if a man should find the girl in a plain out in the wilderness or the fields by herself being espoused, and he doesn't know that, and using force he should go to bed with her, rapes her, you shall kill the man going to bed with her only, for the young woman shall not do anything. There is not sin worthy of death to the young woman. For as if any man should rise up against his neighbor as to murder, and should do murder taking his life, thus is this thing. So it's a serious offense to rape a woman that was espoused. But for in the field he found her. The young woman being espoused, yelled, and there was not the one helping her. Now it changes, and if anyone should find the virgin child, whoever was not espoused, and rapes her, using force on her, went to bed with her, and he should be found, the man going to bed with her shall give to the father of the young woman 50 double drachmas of silver, and she will be his wife, because he humbled her, and he will not be able to send her away at any time. So they used to call that a shotgun wedding when I was a kid. If you humbled a girl, and the father found out about it, and she got pregnant, then he'd come with a shotgun, take you to the nearest justice of the peace, and you were married. And it happened, probably a lot of times. A man shall, but today nobody cares, don't even get married. A man shall not take the wife of his father. That probably is talking about it. I doubt if it would be the mother what you'd want to, but he may have been married to other women and have like David had many wives, and Solomon. You can't take one of the wives. And you shall not uncover the marriage veil of his father. Chapter 23, next video seminar, it's all about social laws, and we'll find out more about these and how, if any of these apply to the New Testament with Jesus. Until next time, God bless.